conversation. Okay. Hi, friends. Some people I know. I'm Evan Krauss. I head up the demand team at Index. We're one of the big programmatic guys, if you don't know. Adam, why don't you tell folks what you do?
Yeah. Thanks for having me here. Glad we have a great J&J representation this morning. But my name is Adam Benaroya. On the newer side, I joined J&J just a little bit over a year ago. Similar to what Matt was sharing this morning, from a different vantage point of the team, there has been a lot of in-house growth. So my team was net new, as I joined last year, sitting within our global team, supporting all of our markets, all of our regions from kind of a fairly traditional center of excellence setup. So, the team is global media capabilities and operations. The legacy of what the individual, prior to my arrival had been covering was very much from partnership standpoint. So managing our global agency relationship, managing our global media partner relationships, your obvious ones like Google, Amazon, et cetera. But with the growth of the desire to have more in-house capabilities, there's now a team with specialists for programmatic, search, social, retail media, to really help all of our brands, all of our local teams scale up the capabilities around each of those programs. So, it's kind of a combination of both the partnerships and the capabilities structure.
Cool. So it's the end of the year. We're going into a new year. We figured we'd cover some of the big themes that are on the minds of a lot of planners and folks in the media space. One of them is sustainability. That'll be the last topic, sort of like what's happening there. How can the media industry help? We're going to get into retail media. It will be second. And first, we're going to talk about audiences. It's a fascinating thing. Google has extended sort of the end of the cookie again. I'm curious, what does that mean? What is J&J thinking? How has this year maybe changed your thinking as you head into next year?
Yeah, I mean, practically speaking, the announcement did not change what we had in the works. Obviously, we doubted that it was going to arrive as they did. I think personally, I was a bit disappointed
You want it to happen?
Yeah, I want it to happen. I want things to break because I feel like this, limbo state that we're in right now is not productive for anyone. And I think we need to truly move over it and, build out and scale the new solution. So, obviously it's a question of when it will happen, but, pragmatically speaking, we have a pretty extensive roadmap with the pillars of what we think we need to build out to quote unquote future-proof our capabilities, when that day happens. So we, kind of the message that we had sent internally off of the announcement was this does not change what we're working on. We're not going to slow down what we're working on. Yes, it gives us more time to diversify and what options we might have on our, in our suite to manage identity post deprecation. But yeah, it didn't honestly change all that much. Although again, I think the limbo state that not just us but the industry in is not productive for anyone.
Yeah, I think many would agree. I think also humans are pretty bad at like getting ahead of problems. So there's way too many folks in our industry still waiting for like, okay, it's dead now. Now what do we do? We work with publishers. I think we're still seeing too many publishers living in that. Next question for you. What, if anything, new have you done maybe this year as you were getting ready and maybe thinking that it was sort of ending? Is there anything exciting or new that was different that's adding to your plans for next year?
Yeah. I think it's a lot of continuation, but what was most exciting for this year is we were able to have multiple, in several markets, multiple, what we consider the best in class future of identity solutions, and starting to do actual testing in market to see what kind of scale we could get on each of the future ID methods. And results were mixed. And again, I think that goes back to what I was saying. I think there's a concern in this interim state that we're not going to see the pressure to get scale against these identity solutions until like we're absolutely forced to. And there's still a reliance on using cookies to scale out some of even the newer identity solutions. But with that said, we're absolutely excited that we're actually getting results back to see, in markets for different brands, for different ID solutions, what kind of scale we can get to replicate what we're doing from a cookie standpoint. So that will, the ID solutions themselves are only one part of what we consider as part of future proofing, but definitely an area that we're going to continue to ramp up and hopefully in more markets and actually start to prove what we can do without cookies entirely. But the reality is most of the alternatives are just not quite there yet, which is why we're going to continue in the testing phase for another year until that actual migration happens.
Yeah. Show of hands, audience participation moment. Who was like with Adam saying crap, like they're extending it longer? Like who was bothered by the stay of execution of the cookie? Okay, so a lot of people were like, good, we need more time. Is that the sentiment of the group? Okay. Seller-defined audiences is, I would say, is one of the more exciting things that's come out of the last year, at least from my perspective. I'm going to define it, and then we're going to talk about it because I think it's new for some people. So, and why the IAB named it that, honestly, I have no idea. It's basically what we're talking about is publishers getting people to sign in, creating an identity, and then passing that identity in the bid stream. So the publishers, whether it's New York Times, Hearst, Meredith, can offer audience targeting the same way that Google and Facebook do. And in many ways, I think it needs to be for free down the road. I think it's the only way the open web can actually compete with what's happening in the walled garden world. So many of us in the space, the SSPs, the publishers and DSPs are focused on this. And I think you will see a lot more of it next year. And as the standards come together, I think it'll be interesting. But the general idea here is you're buying your media, you're using the audiences from the publishers. Has this come up yet? Is this something that J&J is even looking at or talking about? Is it still new in your minds? Do you think it's coming together? I'm curious your take.
Yeah, I'll be honest. The term itself was new to me, but the idea behind it is it's not. I mean, I see it as regardless of what was happening on the cookie the deprecation side, I think what we've seen in programmatic in general of the desire to have more publisher direct relationships, again, nothing new here, but as PMPs were scaling years ago and programmatic guarantee was scaling years ago, it was an indication that we wanted to have that direct relationship with our publishers as we wanted to prioritize that type of content and inventory. So the natural extension of that to not just be talking about inventory, but what types of data and identity those publishers can provide to us, and building out those second-party data relationships is something that we've been doing for a while, but I think this will be more of a formal programmatic way for us to actually execute it. And I think it's definitely something that is going to be, again, like I mentioned, the replacement to cookies is only one part of our quote-unquote future-proofing roadmap. Building out those second-party relationships, both from an inventory and data standpoint, it's an equally critical pillar to us as well. So yeah, I think the term makes sense. It was new to me. But yeah, I think it's going to be exciting to see how we can kind of pair both an inventory and data relationship with publishers and scale much more of that through the open web, as you said. Yeah.
I'd recommend everybody in the room start asking more questions about it. I think it's going to be a big thing next year. We're going to shift into the second topic, retail media. I'll define that, I guess, as well. What we're talking about here is companies that sell stuff, grabbing that data and using it to help advertisers target based on that behavioral data. Index actually launched one of the first partnerships here with Roundel, which is the arm of Target. It allows media companies to come in and target based on people who buy toothpaste or medicines or I'm like trying to think of J&J brands now and I'm spacing, which is terrible, but you get the idea. Is this something, I mean, you guys sell stuff specifically to consumers. Is this on your minds? Is this something you're thinking about?
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely on our minds. Matt mentioned it this morning as well. Obviously, we're going to continue to see increases in budget. And I think it's a question on how fast can the capabilities evolve to meet what we think the ideal standard should be. I kind of see a corollary to where programmatic was in its infancy stages. Like the reason programmatic arose of many reasons was that there was a desire for more transparency into what types of inventory we're buying, and having that all full access to the open web and having that full data set to understand what from a brand safety standpoint and also just from an insight standpoint. So I think the retail, I'll start from a capability standpoint. Very exciting what's being rolled out across the retailers, but in some cases, it's not quite as transparent or integratable into, say, our tech stack that we want it to be. And I think that's where perhaps some of the budget shift that pressure will come faster if, say, we can not just use a retail media network in the platform of their preference, but we can opt in for that either data for targeting or data for measurement in our tech stack directly. And I think the other interesting thing, which we haven't seen too many retailers get to this point yet, but thinking about not just a full, I'll use the word black box loosely, but black box suite of using their data for targeting, inventory buying, and measurement, but starting to decouple that a bit. Why can't we use a retailer's data across our national buy, measure have a real-time signal to measure the impact of that against sales, but not be required to just target their audience segments. So I think that there's a lot of, and again, I think I wouldn't have necessarily expected those capabilities to exist right now, but as retail media evolves, as programmatic did years ago, I do think that kind of full transparency, decoupled products will be where where we can start to shift mass, national dollars into these types of campaigns.
Yeah, I've heard in general that a lot of the value of the retail media is I can connect to attribution, right? So It's not just targeting on it, but then knowing that somebody actually bought it because I can follow it through. I think one of the big things happening is the identifiers become registered users logged into something as we connect retail media to like all media, meaning so then you can start doing the things that you're talking about. So you can just run a media campaign and then check attribution after the fact if sales happen, right? Whether you targeted it or not, for
exactly.
instance. Yeah.
I think that would be the ideal future where and again, I think from a retailer standpoint, not to speak for how they're going to prefer to monetize, but I think that's where the mass national dollars can be then applied if we're using it in more of a agnostic basis from a measurement standpoint, as well as obviously we're going to want to think about their audience segments as a specific part of the investment as well. I think we're excited about it. We're doing a lot of work to help our markets benchmark where each retailer is. What should they be asking for? What does a good test and learn design? It's very much an infancy phase of how can we start kind of putting some pressure on what we want these retailers to do. And kind of the flip side of it is from more of an internal structure standpoint. We obviously have silos that existed for reasons of who has been on point for these parts of the media investment, but we have to get organized ourselves to make sure that we're as streamlined internally to execute these buys, not as a silo, but as an integratable part of our full media mix. So that'll be an exciting change as well. And again, wouldn't have expected it right now. It's going to take years to get to that point, but I think that's where we see the future and what we're trying to, from a global COE standpoint, to start to set some of the benchmarks and baselines of where we would want our markets to get to.
Yeah. I think one of the other innovations that maybe people aren't aware that's happening, I'd say most of the big SSP folks these days are enabling third-party companies to add fees into the transaction. So if you're a Roundel or a Walmart or a Walgreens, which are all companies trying to do this, you can charge for services across a programmatic campaign. So you can even charge for attribution. So they can charge a CPM on the campaign if they want to connect data back. So they can get value out of it if they're offering value to their customers. And it just comes out of the media dollars. So that's going to be more, there's going to be a lot of innovation, I think, happening on that new stuff happening next year. So who's got my time check? Where are we on time? Lexi, where am I on time? Okay. Okay. I guess we can shift into sustainability, right? So another big thing happening. I was just in Europe. I would say it's a lot noisier there than it is in the US, which is interesting. The idea here is everything we do has a tax on the environment. Can we make decisions in the media business that help? It's fascinating, right? Because you could say, well, if we use better technology and literally less hops in a bid stream in programmatic could technically is better for the environment. Most of the stuff today, by the way, has been offset ideas, right? So like I buy a campaign and like some money goes to offset the impact, which is an okay start. I think Scope 3 is leading the way on that, and we'll probably do more. But I think, frankly, my son's an environmental engineer. He laughed at me when I told him that's what we were doing. We have to do things that actually make it better. But I'm curious, how are you thinking about this? Is this important? Are you actually making buying decisions next year based on these things?
So we're not quite there yet. I mean, and I think obviously for J&J, sustainability is not a new, from a business standpoint, something that we've been focused on for a while, thinking about packaging decisions. So I think we have internal teams that are very much focused on sustainability. I think as a media team, as a media COE, we're at the phase of just defining what should our remit be. And we're thinking about, we'll talk about sustainability specifically, but we're thinking about a broader media responsibility agenda. Like, what should our remit be around DE&I? What should our remit be around data ethics? And kind of packaging that with more of the traditional brand safety functions that we've always had as part of our remit. So, for sustainability, you mentioned Scope 3. We're obviously, in that phase, as many advertisers, of just getting a good baseline on what does our, what do our emissions look like? How can we pair optimization decisions that we were making on the supply side already with this new data point? So maybe not at the start of the year. My hope would be probably by the midpoint of the year that we'll have our first baseline understanding of what this looks like. And not, I don't think we're ever, as any advertiser would say the same. I think this will be one additional data point that we do want to take into account as we're thinking about, are there just obvious places that we can cut that are not going to have any or limited business impact on the other KPIs that we're tracking. And as you said, I think the definitely share some concern on the offset piece of this. And from the best that we can tell, we're hoping that at least the offset decisions that are made are real impact versus just taking credit for something that would have been saved anyway from an environment standpoint. But I think what we want to see from the industry is, it seems like this is the one type of engagement, but the one type of quote unquote media sustainability project that the industry is talking about right now. And we're trying to figure out, like, all right, we're going to get this baseline, up and running in the next year, but what does a sustainability roadmap look after that? And I don't think, again, if there are ideas out there, would love to hear them, but I don't think the industry is quite at a point where we're talking more about than just this one kind of facet of sustainability.
One of the interesting things I did hear is there's an agency, I won't name them because I haven't done it yet, is about to ask all of its vendors to sign up to standards by 2030. Mm-hmm. So basically, if you're going to be a partner of theirs and they're going to spend money through whatever mechanism, that they are expecting you to do X by 2030. I think it's interesting. I honestly think it's the brands that have to drive the change. Like the tech industry, the publishers, all the folks in the middle are going to follow what the brands say, which is, it seems like this is one of those initiatives that is like, has good PR value, actually could have an impact if it just forces people to do change. I mean,
there definitely is that PR element, and would want to make sure. And again, obviously from a J&J standpoint, there's a much deeper sustainability agenda that I think this would be a nice attachment for media to have a real impactful contribution to. I think the flip side of it, and we'll see if it ever gets there, but I think we spoke a lot about self-regulation when it came to privacy, and the industry obviously didn't do a convincing enough job to stop regulation from happening. And it seems like that would be an inevitable outcome here if we're not putting meaningful steps forward to limit unnecessary carbon emissions or other sustainability impacts that maybe become trackable down the line. So I think there's both, consumers are going to demand it, maybe not from a media standpoint, because that's a bit indirect to what they are thinking of the brands, and say packaging is a much more concrete impact that we can demonstrate. But yeah, it seems likely that there's a regulation in the future if there's not a good industry requirement, self-regulation in the interim.
Do you think there's ever a time, and I didn't prep you for this question, so warning, there's ever a time where a company like J&J or brands say, I'm actually not going to advertise with companies that are just bad at this?
Yeah, I think that would, I mean, from just a PR and comm standpoint, I feel like consumers are going to get more demanding about that and be vocal about that. Not to say that would be the only reason for us to decide to do that. I think, of course, we can promote our sustainability agenda by putting out statements like that of who we're going to partner or not partner with. So, yeah, again, I think we're excited to define what media responsibility means for us across the different, sustainability being one of the focus areas. I think there's a lot of definition work to do of like, is this more of an internal exercise? Are we going to use this as a larger part of our external comms? There's a lot of opportunity there. And I think we're just kind of excited to define it with the industry and hopefully show that we can lead in a few of the places.
Yeah, that'd be cool. We can do a little Q&A before we wrap up if you want.